Hi, we're Centennial, and you're listening to the West Ada Podcast.
Go Patriots!
How do we have those conversations? I mean, how do we have awkward conversations like that? And
we practice.
Yeah. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes. It really is about practicing. There was a job that I had years ago, and my boss at the time said, how do you get comfortable saying things that are uncomfortable? Well, you do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the West Ada Podcast. I'm Ken Hyde, joined by Katie Rodenbaugh.
Hi.
This conversation today, I've been excited about this since we started brainstorming it, weeks ago. But we're joined by Lisa Hale. She's the counselor at Paramount. Mm-hmm. She's been involved with West Ada for 11 years, has a background in criminal justice, great counselor. And Sarah Everett is the counselor at Owyhee High School. She's been in counseling for 17 years, 6 in West Ada. I'm excited for you to hear this conversation. The two amazing counselors, two amazing ladies.
And just really a broad experience and a wealth of knowledge between the two of them.
Right.
And it's probably important to clarify, because I still get confused about this, school counselors, their roles and responsibilities. You know, at the elementary level, they're really teaching kids how to regulate their emotions and
they're
how to
in the classroom.
They're
literally in the classroom.
There's curriculum. They talk to them about emotions and how to behave well and interact with their friends and that kind of thing. And so they're really getting a good foundation, elementary through middle.
Sure.
And then you get into high school, and counselors wear many hats at the high school, right? So we have counselors, and then we have college and career counselors. So Sarah is a counselor, but she does academic counseling and advising, and then also kind of like that mental health, emotional type stuff too. So they wear a lot of hats and have some good information to share.
They wear a ton of hats, and I think what they had to share is fantastic. Here is our conversation with the ladies.
Well, we are just excited about this conversation today with both of you, Lisa Hale, Sarah Everett, school counselors, your elementary and your secondary, and you can just provide this breadth of information that Ken and I are really, truly as parents concerned about.
Well, and we say it every time. I'm sure our listeners are like, we're tired of hearing that you're parents, but we really are parents, and we're pumped about hearing this conversation. I think it's easy maybe to start with you, Lisa, and the buddy bench. I remember what it felt like when my kids were going off to kindergarten, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what's this like? Mm-hmm. Lisa, when you're dealing with kids at the elementary level, how do we help them deal with the whole friendship thing and all that stuff that goes along with it? How do we help them deal with that to start with?
Well, what's interesting about the buddy bench is what we ended up finding was that kids didn't want to advertise that they didn't have a friend.
Oh, 100%. Who wants to do that?
Right. It was like, well, you could sit on this bench, and they were like, so that everybody knows.
Yeah.
And so really what we often do is, let's say for new students or for kindergarten or younger grades, we find someone to match them up with and have them take them on a tour. So a new student would be a great example of that. You're a new student. I know some really nice kids. I'm going to have them take you on a tour. I'm going to have them show you where to sit, where to do these things. What do we play at recess? And sometimes that'll form a connection, or just getting them out and about and having them feel like they're not just stepping out alone is really great. Kindergartners are really great, and first graders are really great about kind of, in a lot of ways, navigating their own finding of friends, because they just herd together. And so it's really, when I see friendship issues, typically it's more when you start getting into second, third, and older grades, where that's when they start to find more their people. And so helping them find, so helping them find who would be your people. Look around in your class, look around at recess. Who are people that you find interesting, or that you think you'd have things in common with, or that you think are funny or nice? How do we go up and engage? And encouraging them, how would I engage? How would I say, hey, do you want to play this game with me? And so really problem solving with what they feel comfortable doing. Because I can say, walk up and ask them. But if they don't feel comfortable with that, we need to let them kind of lead a way that they would feel comfortable initiating that friendship.
Right.
Makes sense.
Do you see any kind of difference, dealing with kindergartners, first time at school? A lot of kindergartners, it's the first time they're even away from their parents, right? So for kids, do you see a difference between kids who maybe have been less socialized, like I've always been at home with mom, never been to preschool, that kind of thing?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. This separation anxiety that sets in for especially the first couple of weeks of kindergarten. I always know that my first multiple weeks of kindergarten or school year is going to be I'm helping kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I'm helping those kindergartners feel okay, feel safe stepping away from mom.
Sure.
And you can definitely tell the kids that have done preschool or that have been out socializing with peers more.
Yeah.
And those that haven't. But it is also a much bigger, longer day, especially with a full day kindergarten. And so even those kids that have done preschool, there's still an adjustment.
Yeah.
And we just know to expect that. We reassure parents. A lot of times it's the parents that need more reassurance than the kids do. Right?
Oh, gosh.
Are they going to be okay? Are they going to be okay? Are they going to be okay? And I'm like, you know what? They will cry a little bit. They might cry for a few days, but we got them.
Right?
We got them.
Yeah.
And chances are they're probably going to forget about you in like 2 minutes after
They
you
get
just walk
busy.
away.
They have the best
Shiny.
time. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and Sarah, I don't know. I mean, it's funny. So I remember when my kids went off to Siena Elementary, and I remember when my kids were freshmen, at Mountain View.
Yeah.
And eating lunch in your car alone, or what? There's all these different things, and all these. What's that like from your perspective?
I would say it's all those same emotions that a 5-year-old has in a 15-year-old's body. They don't change necessarily as far as that feeling of angst and kind of unknown and where do I fit and who are my people. And so I think that's just a difficult thing to navigate.
Right.
So we really encourage, like along the lines of what Lisa said, who are your people? How do we find them? How do we connect? Where are common interests? Are you a book person? Are you a sports person? Are you a computer person? Like where can we find your tribe? And how do we get you connected and plugged in?
Are there systems in place for that? So I have a sophomore. He had a pretty decent group of friends. He played football, so he was kind of started in the summer before, going into freshman year. I have an 8th grader coming out, or a new freshman for next year. What are the systems in place that we have at our high schools to kind of, freshman orientation type things?
Mm-hmm. So Owyhee does an open house every spring. So ours will be coming up in April, where we have representatives from clubs and all of the different sports, and essentially just kind of a one-stop shop of here's all the things, here's all the ways that you can get plugged in our building. And so that has been really informative and helpful, I think, for parents and the kids. When you're coming from a feeder school, you're likely already coming with kind of a built-in group of buddies. So we were hoping to put together stuff like club fairs and things like that. So once a kid is, it's 9th grade. Now it's the 3rd week of school and I still don't really know anybody. And the lunchroom is still terrifying and overwhelming, cause
always has been, always will be. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially with an open campus for, the older grades, the ones that are there are really the 9th graders or the kids that don't have their license. And so it's kind of like, where do we go? And so our library does a fantastic job about having kind of an open house style, and they have all kinds of different activities and things where kids can kind of go and get plugged in, or sometimes kids really do need just kind of a reprieve from the day. Like Lisa and I had of chatted through that, where it's overwhelming to be in a building with 1,800 people.
Right.
And someone on your, person all day long. So sometimes I think that's okay, where they kind of like just dip out or take a walk around the building. And so I think every kid's different. And so it's about figuring out how to best support that kid in that place. And I think when the parents know what's available, they can also help guide. And you've talked about rockets a lot. There's a rocket club.
Yeah.
How do we get you engaged
There's
here?
your people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Is there a rocket club?
There really is.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Shout out to Shane Subert.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
like beginning of the year, do you both in your buildings I mean, I know my elementary kids have talked about, school counselor came in and talked to us about this, or, making healthy choices and things like that. So there's intentional programming that goes on. Yes. I know for sure elementary, but do you do that? Is there a way to do that in the 9th grade year?
Oh, high school just really hits the ground running.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult for us to be intentionally in all classes, because we really start the year focusing in on those seniors, making sure that they're going to graduate within that year. And so we do individual senior meetings with all of our 12th graders as they start the school year. We've done them in, every year. We're meeting individually with those kids, but especially that senior year, that's pretty integral. But the intentional checkpoints, it's a little more difficult to get into the classes when we have, 1,800 kids in the building. So this year we're going to be doing that. We're calling a minute meetings with our freshmen. It was intended for first semester, and there were some just quirks in scheduling that didn't quite let us get that through. But next year we're hoping to get that right up at the beginning of first semester so we can be in with those kids. And
Sure.
how do we help plug you in? What is the, thing that's going to help connect you to this building, to this next 4 years, those kinds of things. And just get to FaceTime with them.
Right.
A lot of times they don't know who people are in the building that can help. So.
Well, and there's just so much to navigate. And I mean, obviously, we know that you guys love kids, or you wouldn't do what you do, right? But what would you say to parents, maybe? I know you deal with kids a lot. What would you say to parents about helping your kid navigate all these things we're talking about? Maybe, Lisa, where would you go with that?
Well, what's interesting is when we start to have friendship conflict, because they are learning to navigate friendships.
Sure.
And it really does start, especially when you get into about 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in an elementary building. That's where you start to see a little bit more of that conflict playing out as far as, she said this and it hurt my feelings and now I can't be friends with her, or whatever that might be. And so navigating that conflict is really important. And I think that's how you teach them those friendship skills. I always remind parents that it's okay for them to have conflict. It feels very uncomfortable for us.
Right.
And nobody likes conflict, but throughout life we're going to have these moments where there is conflict. And where do we learn? Where do we learn to navigate that? Well, this is now is a safe time to do that. We are there to provide that support for it to be a safe time to learn to navigate. And so sometimes I have to remind parents, like, I'm a mom. I know what it's like to be like, well, let me solve this problem for you. Or let me get in there and tell you, well, you shouldn't be friends with that kid anymore. Really what it is that unless it's really a deal breaker, how do we resolve this so that we can be back on friendly terms, or decide, this isn't a friendship for me, and have that be okay too.
Right. And that is okay, right?
It is okay.
It's okay to say, maybe we just need to stay away from each other. That's fine.
Yeah. I tell kids and parents all the time, you don't have to be hangout friends. You don't. I expect that you be kind and respectful to one another because we all operate together in a system, but I don't expect that you're hangout friends. I'm not hangout friends. It's a term that I use, but I'm not,
That's good. It makes sense.
Like, I'm not hangout friends with every person that I meet.
Of course.
And so I don't expect kids to feel that way either. Your people are your people, even when you're small, but kind and respectful. So how do we maintain that?
Yeah. And I don't know if this is like a girl mom versus boy mom, or I have all boys. And it's generally the drama is a little bit lower, right? There's not as much of this.
Silence is higher, drama is lower.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just different.
It is.
Not better, it's just different, right?
But
They're
I've
different.
noticed over the years that some of my friends really are very involved in their daughters' relationships with their friends. And the moms all get involved, and there's hurt feelings all around. And I'm thinking, like, am I not involved in that? Because I just tell my boys, like, handle it yourself, figure it out. Like, you're going to have to figure this out someday.
Right.
Sure.
So maybe there's a balance between me on one end being like, oh, figure it out, and the moms who are like, well, you said, and your daughter, and,
Right.
because you really it's a detriment to them.
It is if you're too involved, because then we're not allowing them to solve those,
Yeah.
to figure out those relationships on their own.
Yeah.
And so I do think it can be a detriment if we're too involved. And I do think boys, it is interesting in the elementary school where I very infrequently see boys come in for friendship issues.
Right.
And when I do, I'm like, wow, this must really be a thing, because I typically don't. What I do get is a lot of girls that come in and don't know how to resolve that or how to let it go. And boys, I think, are better at letting it go. Like, they may have that conflict that day, and the next day they're like, yeah, we're fine. We're good.
We're good.
We're all good.
We need
Exactly.
you.
We're
Come
back.
back.
Whereas girls, I think, in my experience, or even with my own children, where I'd be like, why are we hanging on to that? Why are we still upset about that? That was,
Right.
that was last month.
Yeah.
And has that happened since? Well, no. Okay, then we've got to figure out a way to be okay with it and to move on. And if you're not able to do that, then maybe that's something we need to talk about.
I've got a boy and a girl, and isn't it just fascinating how even they're raised in the same household, but just how different everybody is. It's kind of crazy.
Or even two girls that are raised in the same household and they're opposites. Like, I have that. So
Different approach.
yeah.
Well, so how do we? So we're talking about this stuff. How do you? I'm not sure where the question is really, but how do we ask good questions? How do we ask good open-ended questions to go? Okay, I see you're having this issue. How do I best communicate with my kids? What advice do you give to parents there, Sarah? I don't know.
I think it's really about just kind of establishing the relationship where the kid knows that you're a safe landing spot, right? I don't want to advise you to death. I don't want to give you all of the ways that I fix this. I want to hear what the issues and the concerns are. I want to help problem solve if that's where you're at. And sometimes we're not ready and they just need to vent. And sometimes that means I have to sit in my mom seat and quietly listen and
Bite
not
my tongue,
try to
right?
I can't do that,
Yeah.
but it's huge.
try
right?
not to
It's
counselor
hard.
my daughter or my son to death, and it's like, just listen to me.
Yeah.
and then you start to see patterns, you start to see things emerge, like what are the things that you can own in this, what are the things that you can learn from this, and then how do you grow forward? Like we got to let it out or let it go.
It's so funny you say that, because literally with my daughter now, I will, because I have that guy fix it mentality, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. And I will literally say to her these days, like, okay, do you want me to just listen, or do you want me to offer suggestions?
It's a great question.
Well, and I didn't know that question.
Yeah.
I think my wife gave me that question from a podcast or somewhere. But it's amazing how many times my daughter will be like, just listen.
Yes.
Why
I just want to be heard.
Why?
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Just need to brain dump. And a lot of times they're fixing it by saying it out loud, or they're recognizing, like, I heard it out loud, or sometimes I'll say things back to the kid in the exact same sentence that they just said to me, but they hear it back differently. And I'm not changing what you said. I'm saying the exact same thing. I'm like, well, but it sounds dumb. Well, I know. And then when you know, you can change things or not, or accept where it is, or, move forward. But I think it's just about being a soft landing spot.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Correct me, because I'm not an expert. I'm just a parent, right? But with my teenagers, I've noticed to listen without judgment.
Yes.
Because even when they're little, right? Like I remember when they were little and they'd like drone on and on about Paw Patrol or something that I'm just like, yeah, but like I knew that someday I'd want them to still want to talk to me. So now that they're teenagers, they tell me stuff that sometimes I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, why are you telling?
Do I want to know this?
Yeah, like why are you? Right.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, and then I do like a face check. I'm like, is my face like scale? Okay, they're like, oh, okay, well,
Fix your face check.
Fix your face.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? Or your friends are struggling with this. Like, what do you think? And so trying to listen without judgment, I think, is probably something that's helpful.
Yeah.
And it can be hard, because there are times when I'm thinking, well, why did you handle it that way? Or why would you have said that? Or, to my own kids or to children,
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I also like to ask, what have you done to try to solve it?
Ooh, good question.
Because sometimes they have done things and it didn't work. And so then we're like, okay, well, what else could we try? So put it back in their playing field.
West Ada is hosting its 3rd annual College and Career Fair on Wednesday, March 6th at Mountain View High School. The College and Career Fair is a way to provide our high school students, especially the juniors and seniors, a way to connect with colleges, trade schools, local employers, and the armed forces. Students, to learn more, reach out to your college and career counselor today. You can also check out the show notes to see a video from last year's fair. It will absolutely be worth your time.
Well, you guys, being likable, I'm using air quotes, being likable, is it important? Why is it important to teach our kids likability?
It's funny. I think when my husband and I started talking about having kids and the ideas of what we had our kids' like future in mind, and you're going to be the smartest and the fastest and the best and all, and then you get into life and you're realizing, be kind.
Let's start there.
Yeah, be a good human, because someone's going to be faster and smarter and prettier and all of the other things. But you can be the kindest person, and that's what draws people in. That's what connects people. That's what creates those long-lasting friendships and networks that will really carry you through hardships in life. So I think likable is definitely an attainable goal for every human.
Right. You made me think we tell our sons all the time, don't give them anything to talk about. What are they going to say about you that oh gosh, he's a nice guy. Oh man, he's so ethical. Or like what are they going to say about you?
Right. So ethical.
Yeah. I love that.
I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Start that
So much
rumor.
integrity. That guy. Great character.
Have you met him? He's so full of integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an attainable goal for every person.
Well,
It is.
and I mean, and it is a socialization thing. I mean, I don't know, Lisa. I mean, how obviously at your stage of the game with those kids, socializing is a huge thing that they're learning. How do we help them do that?
Well, I think we talk a lot about character at elementary school level. I mean, we really do. Like that is very incorporated into just even our day to day is about character, and character is that I'm trustworthy. I can be empathetic, that I can be a kind person, all of those things that we've talked about. And so why is that important? And explaining to children, why is that important? And what is it that you like about a friend? What is likable when you like a person because you think that they're a wonderful person? What is it about them? Okay, well, then those are the character traits that are important. So I think that we just integrate that as a whole into elementary. But it is talking about, are you a trustworthy friend? Are you empathetic? Can you care about others? Are we going to be self-absorbed at times? Certainly. I mean, even
Sure,
as
of
adults,
course.
we certainly are, and so developmentally, it is appropriate that they are self-absorbed at times. But to understand how to put themselves outside of that and to cultivate relationships with others and why that's important. And little kids are really drawn to that. Like when we nurture that, I see it all the time. I see kids being so kind to one another in our school. And it is wonderful. And those moments when they're not kind, it's about teaching them. It's not about now you're this bad person or you've made.
It's not punishing.
It's not punishing. Yeah. It's teaching. Like, okay, did that work for you? Do you feel happy with that? Was that successful? Okay, if not, then what can we do different?
Yeah.
So along those same lines, since we're kind of on this lower elementary level, parents have play dates all the time. Like you structure it, you have a play date, and maybe you're at the park and moms or dads are chatting, kids are playing. Like when do you let them try to figure it out? Do you hover too much? Like when how do you structure that?
I would say that let them show that they're trying to figure it out, and then if they're not being successful at figuring out, then it would be appropriate to step in.
Yeah.
But do it kindly, because really kids are going to make mistakes, and they're not going to know how to always navigate everything. And so with my kids, it was very hard at times where I'd be like, that little girl's being mean to my daughter.
Yeah.
And now I want to go over and,
right.
It is go time.
Like, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to
Mama
throw
bear.
down. I'm going to take on the mom. My daughter's going to take on the daughter. I'm just kidding. I didn't really.
It was not a park fight.
Right. I did not start a park fight. I promise. But internally, there were times when we were like frustrated. And then I had to think, okay, but if I step in, not only am I running the chance of alienating that friendship for my child, I'm also not allowing her to learn.
Right.
So I have to back off until or unless I need to step in.
Right.
Right.
And then if safety is an issue, or they're just really not.
Right. They're not getting anywhere and it's getting worse. Or and then just always doing it in a way that's safe for your child too, because I would never want to, even though I might be mad at someone's child who's being mean to my child, they're also learning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're also
still a
learning.
kid.
It's still a kid.
Yeah, even if it's not yours, it's still a kid.
It's still a kid.
Grace is huge, right?
It is.
I mean, and you remember, I think we probably all remember there were some parents who probably weren't so kind, when you're a kid and gosh, that parent was really not very nice to me, but it feels so good. And you remember the parents who were so kind and loving too.
Yeah.
100%. Well, and you said earlier, 5-year-olds and 15-year-olds are kind of the same.
Yeah.
Is that true here too? I mean, how and when should parents step in for 15-year-olds or 18-year-olds or is there a right way to do that?
I think it's situational, and I think it's kid dependent, and I think that desire of a parent to protect and guide doesn't go away or change, but it should look differently as your kid gains more skills. Because we're training them, like our job is to work ourselves out of a job, ideally, right? As a parent.
That's a great quote.
I don't want a
that.
25-year-old who needs every turn to be fixed by me. And I don't think that is a great way for that young adult to be maneuvering through life.
Of course.
So, I mean, really, like with my own 16 and 14-year-old, I think both of them are, Mom, it's fine. Mom, I got it.
Yeah.
It's fine, I got it. Well, but what's wrong? And I think that the difference is, am I intervening with my kid and problem solving with my kid, or am I going outside of that and I'm robbing them of the opportunity to problem solve with the peer or the teacher or wherever the coach, whatever it is that the circumstance has presented a hardship. I think it's really up to the parent to kind of guide some of those conversations and suggestions, but not take the opportunity away from the kid to overcome the hardship.
Well, and I don't ever want to be the old get off my lawn guy. I don't want to be that guy, right? But I grew up a long time ago, and I mean, we didn't have play dates. We would just go and
You found each other in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's like be home for dinner.
Street lights.
Yeah.
How have you all seen things change? over the course of your time as counselors?
I think that an overextension of parent involvement oftentimes does rob the kids of the opportunity to figure out how to go knock on the door. And my own son, our neighbor, I didn't realize our neighbor was in his class for like 2 years.
Oh, gosh.
And he was
no
finally
way.
walking down the street, and son, is that the same boy that's in your class? Yeah. I said, well, are you ever hanging out with him? Well, I don't know what he likes. I said, he probably likes kids that say hi.
Yeah.
Let's try it. Yeah, let's try it. But I have one outgoing, gregarious kind of, she could maneuver any social circumstance, and my 14-year-old who's 96 on the inside, and he would be totally content to, with his 2 or 3 buddies that he's had for the last 6 years, and like, these are my people and I don't need to extend this. And yes, he and I have been in the same class for 4 years now, Mom.
Yeah. Right.
and the waves. So
That sounds familiar.
yeah. Yeah. I think every opportunity that we have as parents to allow our kids independence, to make good choices and make some bad ones, because we learn from those too, and just encourage them to step outside of their comfort zone is really, really important, I think, because we let them cocoon sometimes a little too much, and then we take those opportunities.
On that cocoon note, I do have a kind of a question that teenagers, sometimes they want to clam up, right? And how do you know when to push a little bit? Because how terrible would you feel if there's something major going on with your kid and you're like, okay, you just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or like, we probably really need to talk about this. How do you find that fine line?
In my own home is really what I can speak to, and especially like with my little 97-year-old 14-year-old son, it's like we've kind of established a timeline. Like if I'm seeing this go on for a few days and I've asked and you said, it's fine, Mom, it's fine, I'm fine, nothing's wrong. Well, and my girlfriend gave me the great quote of, you got to let it out or let it go. And you're either going to talk through this with me or with a trusted person or with a friend or, someone else that we've identified that's on your team, or you're going to let go. And if we're still, simmering in this a few days in and I'm seeing, concerning behavior or withdrawal or kind of just a change in personality in general, now I'm going to push. And here's our opportunities, right? Like, are we going to talk through this or are we going to move through this? Which one?
Right.
So
having tools just like that, the let it out or let it go. I mean, that's from the very beginning, like the love and logic for parenting toddlers, just having some of those tools to know. Because sometimes as a parent, you don't have the words and you don't want to push and you don't want to go back to like our old school raising where it was because I said so. Or,
Right. Right.
I appreciate that. Let it out or let it go.
Yeah, it's definitely, my kids are done hearing it at this point. But I love my friend for telling me that many, many years ago, because she's same thing, same boy mom, she's like, I just have these 2 little dudes that want to stew and whatever it is.
Right.
So
that's funny.
It's been a great term.
Well, and to piggyback off what you said about another trusted adult, even if it's not me,
I
always told my 2 girls, it doesn't have to be me. It really doesn't.
And sometimes it shouldn't be.
It might be healthier. Yeah.
And times would I prefer it was me? Sure, because I always want, I always want to be the one. I always want to be the one that you come to. But sometimes it's not ideal. It's not always best. But ultimately, if you have a trusted adult that's not me, that there's something bothering you that you want to go to, I'm going to give grace to that. I'm going to accept that, because it doesn't mean that I'm less of a parent. It means you have more people on your team.
Yes,
exactly.
More people who love you.
Yeah, more people who are supporting you and involved with you. And I'm never going to turn down if it's an appropriate trusted adult. I am never going to turn down that additional person in my child's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't always have to be me.
It's just an ally on that team.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it when it's not my voice, to be honest with you. To your point, it's like, if someone else is speaking truth into my kid's life, fantastic.
Well, and sometimes they listen. I can say the same thing, and then someone else will tell them, and I'm like,
I've been telling you that for 3 weeks.
Interesting.
My favorite is they'll come back and spout it to me. I'm like, I feel like we said that exact same thing, Dad and I. I know, but now Coach said it, so it must be true.
So now it's true.
Right.
Coach is cooler and smarter than you.
Which I'll take. Honestly, at this
absolutely.
point, I'll take. As long as you hear it and absorb it, where it came from. I mean, obviously trusted adults and things like that, but where it came from is not as important as you
hearing
learn
it.
Well, and there's so much stuff. I mean, this is more like middle school. Well, it's not middle school. It's all ages, but popularity, bullying. Our kids are dealing with so much stuff.
Yeah.
How do we best deal with that? How do we best have those conversations when it's been an appropriate amount of time? It's like, no, we need to have a conversation. How do we broach those conversations, I guess, is the question.
You know what I always like to do with my daughters was, and I even do this a lot of times with students that I work with, it is hard sometimes to sit down and have that one-on-one conversation where you're looking at me, you're expecting me to answer, and this is uncomfortable. And so we would drive in the car. We would go do something. I will take students for walks. We will do a puzzle, whatever it might be, because then I'm not staring at you while I'm expecting you to tell me something that maybe you're feeling uncomfortable or vulnerable about. And so sometimes it's a great opportunity. Like my kids would be trapped in the car with me. I'd take my daughter somewhere and I'd be like, and then it felt safer for them to tell me, because not only did they know there was an end to it because we were going to arrive.
We're just driving in the car. We're going to get there eventually.
Right. Yeah. They were like, we're not like taking just a, like a tour somewhere, right? Where we have a destination. I'd be like, yes. But I think it took a little pressure off. And so it was just a great opportunity to bring up things at times and if they really didn't want to talk about it in that moment, it was like, well, then when would be a good time?
Yep.
Right.
I will let you identify a good time. It doesn't have to be on my timeline. It can be on your timeline, but I do want to talk about
But we
this.
are going to circle back.
But we are going to come back to this.
Yeah.
I love to hear that because it circles back to our very first episode with Detective Garza.
Absolutely.
And what did she call them? Like windshield conversations?
Yeah, screen time or windshield time. Yeah. She actually brought that up. Yeah, our very first episode. And it's a great time, especially with like boys and girls. Like I even said in that episode, like my daughter sometimes is like, no, I want eye contact. Whereas, sometimes guys are like, oh, we're looking straight ahead.
Yeah.
We're not really talking, but we're actually talking.
I especially tend to do that more with
young men.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It gives you some breathing room, I think.
It does, because it's less awkward.
Intimidating.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just need a hug still. You know what I mean? Like my boys are like, my 15-year-old's 6'4", and sometimes he's having a hard time, and he'll like come sit on my lap, and I'm like, my heart is melting, Like
I don't let him see it on your face.
You don't see how much I love it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just
so
like
great.
you said, a 5-year-old, 15-year-old, not a lot of difference.
It's funny. So last weekend I was with my son, who's now in college, a freshman in college, and we were FaceTiming with my wife and daughter, and he just happened to put his head on my shoulder. I'm like, well, this is awesome. When was the last time this happened? But it was kind of cool.
You know? This?
I'm like, Michelle, are you seeing
Michelle, screenshot.
Take a picture.
Or even like cute nicknames. My younger daughter, who's in college up at U of I, I sent her a little Valentine's gift and she got it early. And I used the nickname that I had for her when she was little. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize just like that hit my heart. I love that, Mom. She goes, I love that you said that to me. And I was like, here's a starter that's going to be 20. And she's like, oh, you called me Cheenie.
That's really cool.
So I think, they're still, even as young adults, teenagers, young adults, they still need that.
I was going to say, they need a soft place.
They do.
Well, okay, so I'm totally jarringly shifting gears here. Okay, so I'll be honest, but like romantic relationships. Like what's funny to me is and I'm sure it's maybe changed in the last 15 minutes, but the whole idea we're talking, like I didn't know what, like back in the day, it's like we're talking, and
we're going out, we're talking,
and I had no idea, like if I'm snapping, that's one thing, but if I start texting, that's a whole different level.
Oh, it's a different level.
How do we help how do we know about this stuff? How do we help our kids navigate it?
Honestly, you just have to kind of own your ignorance, I think, sometimes.
I'm good at that.
Same. And honestly, I'll tell a kid when they're sitting with me, I don't actually know what you just said to me. Can you break it down in old lady terminology, please? Because I don't know the different classifications. And we did, we were sitting in the kitchen and we asked my 16-year-old, what does this mean? Like, I know what I think it means, but you tell me and what are the other terms? And she's like, Mom, oh my gosh, like, are we done here? So
she was a good sport.
She was. She played along. She played with my shenanigans.
Yes. But you learn those terms, and then I try to use them. Like last night at dinner, I asked my 15-year-old, like, so who are you risen up these days? And everybody just looked at me like, oh my God.
Like, why do you do that? Why do you do that?
You're trying too hard, Mom. Yeah.
And I think that it's funny because I know I'm not cool enough to pull off the terminology, but every once in a while I'll throw it in knowing I'm completely butchering it. And my daughter's like, Mom. And my son just laughs at this point, like, you're ridiculous. Like, just be done. So I think it's more about just owning my oldness and I don't know what you're saying to me.
That's not what we called it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Can you define that?
Well, but what's funny too, but these are age-old things. Like in the 60s, we're like, hey, I'm groovy or whatever. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. No. How do we help our kids understand, hey, I've been there.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not preaching at you, but I've been there. How do we got to navigate this. How do we do that?
Right. My favorite is listening to them when they're in the car. And I've lost some of that with my daughter who now drives. Mm-hmm. But when there's a bunch of them in the car, let them have control of the radio.
Yes.
Turn it up. listen to whatever they're listening to, whether you love it or hate it, because you learn a lot from the music,
right?
And then listen to the conversations. And I don't ask questions, and I don't make facial expressions, and I'll jump in if I'm asked. But I really just enjoyed chauffeuring them because I learned a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I
It's almost like they kind of forget you're in the car.
Yeah.
100%.
And then you're like, ooh, this is so informative.
tidbits.
Yeah.
Just pull tidbits.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Do we talk about at schools? Do we talk about healthy dating, relationships, things like that? Is that any kind of curriculum that the kids are learning, or?
I wouldn't necessarily. There's a few classes where it's like embedded in the curriculum of boundaries and healthy kind of relationship habits. And then we have sources of strength in our building. All the high schools will have it next year as a class. And there's definitely some pieces of strong relationships and what to look for and kind of how to identify things that are good for and not great for your relationship status. So I think that that's going to be really helpful.
Students and families, we are thrilled to inform you that all 58 schools within our district, including elementary and middle schools, are now actively participating in the West Ada Athletics and Activities Fundraiser.
Estudiantes y familias, estamos encantados de informarles que las 58 escuelas de nuestro distrito, incluidas las escuelas primarias y secundarias, ahora están participando activamente en la recaudación de fondos en beneficio de atletismo y actividades de West Ada.
In addition to the fundraising, it offers you the opportunity to win some incredible raffle prizes.
Además de recaudar fondos, tendrán la oportunidad de ganar premios increíbles en las rifas.
For details, please click the link in today's show notes.
Para conocer todos los detalles, por favor haga clic en el enlace de las notas del programa de hoy.
So with our teens, we talk about being kind of self-focused, and that can often lead to them feeling like, I'm the only one experiencing this. This is the worst, or, I'm the only one going through this. Mom and dad don't know what they're talking about. How do we kind of help them feel not so isolated?
I think it's been important in our practice, like when we're talking with kids, is just to really help normalize some of that. I think we all, especially in that season of life, we just feel like the magnifying glass is on us. And I remember watching my daughter start 9th grade, and her room was destroyed in trying on every different outfit for the first 4 days.
Right.
I was like, what are you doing? And she said, well, I don't know one. And I said, honey, no, I love you. I care what you wear. No one else cares.
Yeah.
You are the only one seeing this. You are the only one circling in that. So please move through that onto the next thing. And so I think just reminding them that we all have something. We're all carrying something. And when you find that connection and those people that can help you carry that and normalize those things, that's been helpful for, I think, a lot of my students to remember.
I could see that. And I think when I used to actually work at the high school level, and so a lot of times when I'd have that conversation with the kids, I'd say, I realize that you think that I'm very old and that I've probably never had any of the experiences. But, I remember feeling that way.
Oh, heck yeah.
And I'd always say, I don't know exactly how you feel, but I do remember I was mortified when, and, sharing like this awkward moment in my life. And they were probably like, yeah, I could see that with you, Hale. But, just being like, you do survive. You do survive it. And I know that you think that everybody noticed when you fell down in the hallway, but people are really not talking about that. They're talking and worrying about their own things. Because we really do. We focus on what is it that I've done that was awkward or strange today. We're not thinking about what somebody else did that was awkward or strange.
Is it good to share some of our stuff from the past?
Yeah.
How do you know when that's appropriate?
Well, I think don't turn it back into, oh, yeah, me.
Sure. Right.
But just being like, oh my gosh, I remember when something similar happened to me. And then, just a brief snippet. It doesn't have to be a big, long story or
where it organically fits.
Yeah, where it organically fits. Does it feel right? And my kids now are like, remember that time when you told me this happened? That was really funny. And that actually did help. And I was like, oh, good. Because I didn't know if it scarred you or helped you. But
Right.
So,
yeah, I think about that when helping like my oldest, go through a breakup and sharing like, God, I thought my high school boyfriend was it. Like I loved him. I was so sad. I know your feelings. And then just sharing with them like the progression to finding dad, who's like my ultimate partner and you're learning. And I think he took a lot away from that. And so if you can share on that level with your kids, your kids don't need to think that you're perfect. Right, because it's an impossible standard for them.
Humanize yourself.
Yeah.
Humanize yourself.
Because they don't think of, your kids don't really think of you.
Well, they don't
as
think of you
as
having a
person.
life, right?
Right.
Your
Like
mom,
your life is
your
only
dad.
here.
Right.
Those are the only.
Absolutely.
What are you
Yeah.
doing other than being my mom?
Exactly.
You mean you've had these? What?
Yeah.
Hold on. Well, and there's just so much, you guys. I mean, we're not breaking any new ground here.
Right.
We know our kids are dealing with mental health stuff. They're dealing with depression, anxiety, some big stuff. How do we, you guys deal with this every day. How do we help them navigate those things as counselors, as parents? How do we help them navigate some of the big stuff?
Well, even at elementary school level, I do have students that will come to me and report that they are feeling, thinking about harming themselves, thinking about making statements that are concerning. And it is scary to think, oh my gosh, we have these young kids. But they do. People will say, well, kids don't have a hard time. Yes, they do. They have so many stresses, so many expectations from lots of different directions. And so I will always say to them, okay, tell me about how you're feeling. And it's okay to talk about it. Like it's actually not healthy to not talk about it. And so I will say, well, tell me how you're feeling. Let's talk about that. This is something we need to share with your parents. And so let's talk about how we can share that with your parents and what we can have happen. And I just really encourage parents that this is not something to be angry at them with. This is how they're feeling. We need to be that soft place. We need to support them and do the things to help them know that we do love and care about them and that we're going to do what we can to help them.
So if there's a parent that a child has expressed something like this to the parent, how do you advise them to reach out to the school Is a school counselor a good starting point to get help in this?
I think so.
Yeah, for sure. And even if it's not something that we could necessarily in a long-term fashion treat or see, we can offer resources. We can hopefully connect them with the appropriate community agencies that can help them get connected with the right person or the right team of people to help make sure their kid is safe, make sure the supports are in place. And I think that's the biggest thing.
And that's what we always immediately do is there's a referral process, finding community supports, because that is out of the scope of what we would have the time.
Right, the capacity for.
The capacity for. And then we work in a supporting role with that. So.
And I would also say, I think there's some people that still have such a strong stigma tied to that of
100%.
How is my parenting going to be judged if I tell them that my kid is struggling? How am I going to be looked at differently, or how is my kid going to be, other? And I think it's just such an important thing to remember that it's a really important conversation to be able to have openly, and not from shame or not from guilt or not from what's been done wrong, but how do we address it and move forward? How do we get your kid the right tools?
Oh yeah, and shame and stigma, it's a thing. It's a thing for adults, grown-up adults. Right. How do we help or are there resources that we can use to help our parents go, listen, I know you don't want to talk about these big things, these suicide or whatever else, but what resources can we recommend to them? Or do you have any resources like that?
For the parent?
Yeah, for the parent. I mean, for the parent to get beyond, I guess my question is, sorry, I'm rambling, but my question is, how do we help parents get beyond shame and worrying about, I'm going to be, I know, sorry, just a shallow end of the pool question.
Let me introduce you to Brene Brown. That's so funny because that's actually my friend. No, I think, it starts with us as parents, right? It starts with us as school counselors and being able to normalize the discussion and identify that emotions are real, whether we agree with them or always, want to admit that they're there. They're there whether we like it or not sometimes. And so I think it's really important for parents to be able to lean into their connections and their networks for support. And sometimes I think the school officials become those networks depending on the age. And I know that looks different at different school grade levels. But I think it has to be normalized and not necessarily, I'm going to walk around and talk about all of my diagnoses. I don't need to normalize it on social media from that standpoint, but more from a standpoint of, I understand what you're going through and that's okay. And how do we move forward? Yeah. How do we build a path
And there
forward?
are people who are there to help you. There are professionals that are available to help you. And,
for sure.
I notice in this role as community liaison that we are a resource-rich community, and there are so many organizations available right here in the Treasure Valley to all of our families that can really give you the tools and the help you need to move forward and to parent and love your family effectively and healthy.
Yeah. Well, and I tell parents a lot, if you're feeling nervous or scared or not knowing how to navigate finding those resources and making those connections, I am more than happy to help you do that.
Yeah.
Because it is overwhelming to think, okay, here's a topic that scares me to death as a parent.
Sure.
And I don't know how to navigate getting the help that they need. Even when you are given a list or it can feel overwhelming. And I will say, I will help you. I will help you make those calls, or I'll help you come up with the questions to ask. That can be a role that I'll take on to help you with that, because while that's what I want for you, is to be able to access those resources and to feel successful in doing it, because it does feel overwhelming to look for help.
100%. Well, and you brought up social media a minute ago. I mean, in a fun sort of way, but yeah, all of us are dealing with a whole new thing with social media.
So glad I didn't have it when I was a kid.
Oh my gosh!
For lots of reasons.
A million. Yeah.
Well, and we did go over this with Lieutenant Garza a lot in our very first episode, but our second episode, I think. But social media, we all know it can be detrimental. How do we help them navigate that?
I think just being open and honest about it, being very cautious about the use, monitoring to the best of your ability. And I know that's hard, and I know sometimes that's impossible. And I know even my own social media use or like knowledge, I don't use it very often. I kind of suck at it. Anybody who knows me well knows that I suck at it. But there's pros and cons, just like every other thing in life. But I think one of the big things that worries me is that they're more engaged there, so they can be less engaged elsewhere. And so we have a lopsided approach. So have you gotten a good night of rest? Have you eaten whole and healthy food? Takis and a Monster is not breakfast.
It's not breakfast.
Right.
So
have you gotten fresh air?
Yeah. Have you seen the sun? Ever?
Vitamin D would be great for you.
100%. And so some of those little things that we miss in self-care, I think social media just becomes this very deep pit when we're already deficient in those other areas. So that's when I see a shuffle. And
the face-to-face interaction is so important. And I know that they do that with their peers, but I think social media often does take the place of sometimes that face-to-face, and recognizing that what you see on social media is not accurate for the life that someone's living.
Right.
No.
You are seeing the best moments.
Literally a
highlight reel.
snapshot.
Yeah.
Yes.
But how do we help? I get it. Yeah. I'm a grown man. I get it. How do we help the kids understand this is not reality? How do we help them?
I think having those conversations about do you think that that's what their life looks like every single day, or do you think that, or even just, I know with my girls, we would talk about how people can edit things to look a certain way, right? Like this will be edited hopefully to make me look very, very well spoken,
right.
Tall and thin and well spoken.
Yeah, there you go.
But we edit things to look, and so like looking at our own life, do you think if we edited this portion of our life and presented it, would people think we have a certain opinion of us? Or if we edited if we showed what the back looks like,
right.
would they know? And knowing that you can apply that to other people's lives as well. They may look like they're out doing all of these great things, but do you think that they have struggles? What do you think some struggles might be? And just really making them aware that like behind the facade is everybody living a very similar life,
very normal life,
a very normal life.
Yeah, again, you're not the only one that feels this way.
You're not the only one that feels this way.
Right.
I've been out the last couple of weeks with Dr. Bub, visiting all the student council and leadership classes. It's something he likes to do each semester, and just really talking to them and hearing from our high school students. And I think I'm hopeful. I think we're seeing the pendulum start to swing. I think kids are starting to kind of notice the detriments of social media, the detriment of being plugged into your phone all the time. And so hearing these students say that, it's so nice when a teacher has us put our phones away during class, because we have that hour and a half to actually engage, and we're
literally
learning unplug and learning to actually look people in the eye and hang out and have fun with our friends, and having the ability to forget that we even have phones and don't need to snap every single thing. And
and even when it's not bad news, I think being exposed to like a perfect life is stressful.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh.
Social media is stressful.
Comparison.
Screen time is stressful.
Yeah.
And so we are actually creating stress even if we don't recognize that we are. So it's like a constant stress, or a constant engagement that our brains need a break.
Yeah, it's a rewiring of our brains,
Yeah.
really. The receptors just aren't built to receive all day. So it's difficult.
Well, and you all already talked a little bit about some of the stuff, eating well and sleep.
Sleep
and
hygiene.
I'm a huge sleep Nazi, always have been.
Yeah.
I'm still that
Sleep
way.
Nazi.
That's probably not the right term I should use. I apologize for saying it, but I've been that way for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, sleep's important, right?
Yeah.
And again, to kind of jump back into the deep end of the pool, I mean, it makes me a little angry at myself that I still get uncomfortable using the word suicide or the importance of monitoring medicines and how guns are taken care of in houses. How do we have those conversations? I mean, how do we have awkward conversations like that? And
We practice.
Yeah. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes. It really is about practicing. There was a job that I had years ago, and my boss at the time said, how do you get comfortable saying things that are uncomfortable? Well, you do it. You do it. And so you push through. You push through that uncomfortable feeling, because how do we get better at something that we're not good at? We push through being uncomfortable. And I think that goes for talking about topics that are uncomfortable.
Or big or scary. And I think if it's from parent to kid, that's terrifying. If you're really concerned that your child is in a position considering ending their life, there's no easy way to have that conversation. But also, you'll never regret having a conversation. Yeah. You don't ever want to question or think, what could I have done? What should I have done?
You would regret not having the conversation.
100%. Even, you don't want questions left unanswered, I think. And you're not going to plant ideas. You're not going to, push them down a road that they're not maybe already on. So I think really just being very blunt and honest about it. Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what's making me nervous. Here's what I'm worried about. I love you. I want the best for you. How do we fix this? Not even fix this. How do we work?
How do we support this?
Yeah, support.
How do we support you while you're going through this?
Yeah.
Well, and I kind of wonder, so one of the things I do with the district is I get to go to all the graduations. And last year at the Meridian High School graduation, one of the most compelling speakers I heard was one of the Meridian High School kids. And he got up in front of Extra Mile Arena at Boise State. And one of the things he talked about was his sister who had died by suicide. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this kid has got so much more guts and so much more strength than I do as a grown man. I guess so. I'm rambling, but I guess my question is, are what do you guys see? Are kids comfortable talking about hard situations? What do you all see there?
Typically, when we have like a notification that there's a student concern, it comes from another kid. Mm-hmm. More often than not, it's a concerned friend. It's someone who heard something in a class.
Even at elementary, that's true. Yeah. It's usually a peer that will notify an adult that another student's struggling.
And bless their heart. Like, I don't know what to do with this. This is big and heavy and hard, and I'm scared, and I don't know how to help my friend, so I have to give this to somebody. Good on them. Good on you. Give it over. I don't have all the right tools and resources sometimes, but I can help connect, and I can help make sure you're safe today, and I can help, make that kid feel seen and known and loved, hopefully, right? So I think that kids are much more willing and open than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
Yes. And kind of on the flip end of that, I'm curious if you see this, because I've observed it in a couple different high school settings. Maybe a group of friends that it's maybe somehow cool within their group to be like, I'm more messed up than you. I have more troubles than you. And
like counterculture.
Yeah. And is there an effort to kind of help those kids when you see, I don't want to say other, right? Like, I feel like I'm othering. I'm not trying to do that, but it's toxic to be in that group of friends where you're all trying to compete for having the worst life.
Who's got the worst lot?
Yeah.
I think honestly, I'm a pretty blunt person.
I mean, it's okay to be call them on it.
I just kind of jump. Well, and I think I try to do it in a neutral position. Like, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm concerned about. Here's what I've heard from your friends, or here's what I've heard from teachers. I like to blame teachers a lot because kids are always afraid, like, oh, don't tell them I told you. No, it's fine. I'm going to blame it on third period teacher that they heard it because the teacher's like, this is my job is to keep you safe. So I'll take the brunt, But I think that it's okay to be really honest with them about how do we work through. It sounds like you've got some things that are stressful in your world right now. How do we help manage that? What are the tools that you already have? What are resources that you have access to? Who's on your team? Do your parents know about these things? Right. Do you have friends that are helping support you? Have you been outside today? Go pet your cat. Go walk your dog. Yeah, jump on your trampoline. But really, our brains are reset through exertion and through processing those fight or flight, just release of hormones that come naturally. And if we're constantly at angst and we're not processing that, it's really awful on our system, on our rewiring.
Yes. We're just stewing in it, and that's not ever going to be helpful.
Is it okay to recommend a separating of friend groups in that kind of in that situation where it might be toxic? Or
I think I'm hesitant to separate.
To encourage that?
Yeah, I think it's just more about helping you recognize, like, what do you feel like when you're with that group of people? What do you feel like what is your best day? Who's there? Right. What are you doing? Is that how you feel when you're with these people? And if it is, okay. That's
and is that how you prefer to feel, or would you prefer to feel different and maybe better?
Yeah.
You know, and having them recognize, oh, you're right. Like, maybe I do tend to walk away from that not feeling, maybe I've one-upped you on how bad it is, but I actually don't feel joy in that.
But how do I feel when
do
I
I
walked
walk away
Yeah.
feeling like, boy, that felt good, or do I walk away going, oh man, that actually
Depleted.
really feels draining and bad?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about some hard stuff, but but I can tell. I just met you guys today. You like to have fun.
Yes.
Very much so.
Why do you love kids? Why do you do what you do?
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. They're the funniest,
They are
best
fantastic
humans, and I just love them.
You never know what's going to happen. You never know what quirky thing they're going to say. Right. You get to just be a snapshot in their life.
Yes.
And just, especially across high school, and I know elementary school has to feel the same. I'm sure middle school feels the same too. But just to see the little scared baby freshman who now walks across the stage 4 quick years later as sometimes having gained just a few skills, but hopefully, I'm
lots of skills.
a little more confident. I'm a little better of a human. I'm a little more courageous. I'm a little more educated, and I'm ready for whatever's next. And so I can't imagine any other thing.
Super cool. Yeah. Well, is there anything I can't thank you guys enough for being here. Is there anything we haven't covered that I always say this, but is there anything we haven't covered that like, oh, Ken, we should talk about this before we go? Or have we kind of?
Oh my gosh! Well, there are so many topics that we could probably go through. But
I already told you I'd stay here all night. So
no, I think it's just engage other adults in your child's life. Engage with your child. Support them. When we say allow them to make their own mistakes, it doesn't mean step away and don't parent. Yeah. Don't parent.
Sure.
Find that balance. And I know that sometimes saying find that balance is like, well, what does that even mean?
Does it mean?
Where is the line? And what is that? But I think trust your gut and just watch and let them with the safety net. Yeah. Right? You're the safety net. You're not the performer. You're the safety net. So as they're up there walking
net,
that,
not the bubble, right?
Yes,
you have to let things filter through the net. Sometimes that aren't your most desired thing, but I think letting things through the net that might feel, oh, okay, I gotta breathe on that one.
Take a breath here.
And trust them.
Yeah.
I think we need to trust them more.
And you know what? One of the things I actually was talking about with my daughter last night that stuck with me, and this would be one thing that I would want to bring up would be, I, throughout my parenting life, have found that apologizing to my child has actually been a fantastic, not I apologize for all the things that I've done to wrong you, but more like, wow, you know what? I really didn't do that well.
Oh, man.
I didn't handle that well. Boy, I really came at you with maybe some judgment, or boy, I didn't listen to you, and what you really needed was some venting time. And just owning that, like, maybe I didn't do that great. Right. You know, I'm not doing it perfectly. What would have helped in this situation? What could I have done that would have been more helpful to you? And accepting feedback from your child, because trust me, I'm winging the parenting thing. Like, I know that I took all these classes 100%. And I'm supposed to, sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm a counselor, I should have done this all perfectly. Oh my gosh, I'm winging it.
You're a human.
I'm a human.
You're a fabulous human.
And so just, thank you. So are you. We're fabulous together. So just owning that sometimes we're not going to do it right. And you know what? I make mistakes, and I'm not the be all end all. I'm not going to always do it right. And I recognize that. So let's talk together about how that could have went better.
Yeah.
I like that.
I love that.
Love it. Well, thank you both for being here. Can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having us. It's been fun.
Well, we just can't thank you enough for being here. And to Lisa and Sarah, I always say it, please subscribe to us anywhere, wherever you get your podcast. We'd love for you to subscribe there. You can watch on YouTube. Go to YouTube and search out West Ada, and you can find us there as well. And I tell you what, we always ask us to send emails, but we talked about some pretty heavy stuff today. So if you're a parent out there, or if you're a student that needs some help and is dealing with some tough stuff, please feel free to shoot us an email at communicate@westada.edu. westada.org, and we will get that email. We'll get you the information. We'll get you to the counselors that you need. I love West Ada that we've got so many talented professionals
resources and great caring people.
So please shoot us an email, and we'll get you in touch with people who can help you. And so I just loved our conversation today.
Yeah, we could have gone for a couple hours on this one.
Could have gone a lot longer. And we've got another great one coming up.
We do. The next one will be dropping on February 26th, and it's the first time we're going to have West Ada students on the podcast. So
I'm really excited to have students with us.
Super excited about that. We have Colby Bond from Renaissance High School. He's in the International Baccalaureate IB Diploma Program. I mean, that is extremely rigorous. Speech and debate leader. So that'll be really interesting. And then we have Riley Chung, and she is the ASB president at Centennial High School. And I've had the privilege of getting to speak with her out in the community at different things, and two dynamic, amazing students. So we're really excited to showcase them and have a conversation.
I think it's going to be so much fun. And I don't know. It's just, it'll be, I think, cool as parents to have them give us an idea of what it's like to be a high schooler in 2024.
They promise an honest and open conversation, so
it'll be a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us, and until then, we'll see you next time.
If you or someone you know is struggling or experiencing a mental health crisis, please reach out for help. Get connected to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988 from your phone, or text HOME to 741-741 to reach a volunteer crisis counselor. The crisis line offers free 24/7 support.